Welcome to the Coach's Corner podcast, a platform where we get together to share our experiences, industry insights, and create discussions that challenge our own biases and thought processes behind everything that we do. This podcast is brought to you by our partners, Iron Edge, who are industry leaders in high-performance strength training equipment in Australia. If you're after any strength training equipment and spot something of interest, I'll then connect with the team over at Iron Edge and I'll see if I can snag you a better deal. Now over to the podcast. All right, guys, episode 5. Episode 5, Michael? Yeah, Coach's Corner podcast. Izzy, welcome back on.
Thank you.
Last one was very intense. We had Christian Woodford on the show, and today I was going to keep getting better. Jordan Radliff, welcome on.
Thanks for having me on the Coach's Corner.
Very pleased to have you here. Obviously, a great leader, great mentor, now a great friend of us at Peak, myself and Isaiah in particular. Do you want to introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, what you're about?
Definitely. Jordan Radliff, physiotherapist. Grew up on the Gold Coast and did all my studies on the Gold Coast. So I did undergraduate in exercise science and a bachelor in physiotherapy. Moved straight to Melbourne post that. And then from there got into traditional physiotherapy for the first 3 years. And then decided I kind of wanted to get into more sports or just the sporting athlete, I guess. And then from there found Christian Woodford, who you spoke in the last episode. From there, started to see a little bit more of that athletic population, which just really went into the ACL world. And then the ACL world started to open my eyes to how challenging this can be and how underdeveloped kind of the rehab can be in the ACL world. And that pushed me on the path that I'm kind of going through at the moment of just working with a lot of knees, a lot of ACLs, and building that space up to a level that can be really good for return to sport criteria, I guess.
Did you mean to niche down that path?
No, I didn't mean down to niche at all. I just didn't love the traditional physio, and I just wanted more than that. And then from there, like it just all happened. Yeah, the niching part just came with probably the most common injury that we see in this long-term kind of sporting world is the ACLs. And just the volume of people playing sport too in Melbourne, like I just started to see more and more and more. And then social media, I guess, being with Christian Woodford, like that got pumped up a little bit, and that's how it happened.
Awesome. Take us back a little bit through that time and the progression to where you are now. So obviously at Rebuild Health and Performance up there in Northcote.
Yep.
Myself and Isaiah have both spent a bit of time with you there. Do you want to take us through briefly that evolution from coming to Melbourne, spending time at Woodford's, how that sort of eventuated? Because Christian told us how that happened on the last podcast. We'd love to hear your version of it, and then moving into Rebuild where you are now.
Yeah, I think in the traditional physiotherapy world, we get good with our hands, but we're not really good at prescribing exercises, not really good at that S&C pathway. So I wanted to try and find a way to get better at that. And someone told me one day when I was still living on the Gold Coast about Christian Woodford, because I really didn't know anyone in the S&C world when I was down here. So I just hit him up and said, I want to come learn from you. And I was just one of his clients to start with.
Exactly what he said.
Yeah, so I just wanted to learn, and I was one of his clients for a long period of time, and then his physiotherapist left. She was going on to do different things, and he pretty much just said, all right, we've got a spot, you're taking it. And I was young, so I was just like, all right, let's give it a go. And that whole time I was there, though, I was just learning more about that S&C world and just learning how to do what I do in the physiotherapy part, but how can I transition an athlete from those early stages through to those later stages? This wasn't really with any ACL type athlete. This was just a general person to start with. And then from there, the more I was at Woody's gym, the more we started to see those ACLs or those rehab type population. So that's the biggest thing that I wanted to get out of that whole experience over those 3-4 years was just get better at the S&C world. I think I went a little bit too far and turned into more of an S&C rather than a physiotherapist. And I think that's where Rebuild has helped me a lot as well, getting back into that environment where George, the owner of Rebuild, is extremely good with being a physiotherapist at the same time as being a good S&C coach. So I went a little bit too far to start with, but I think being at Rebuild, I've really found that I guess holistic kind of approach of being a good physio, but also being good at that S&C type world.
Awesome. How did that transition happen with with George? How'd you meet George, and then how did you move into rebuilding that environment there?
Yeah, well, I live up in Northgate, and to get down to Woody's gym down in Moorabbin, it was just like it's an hour. So I was constantly doing that, which was really fun, and I enjoyed it. But then I was like, I want to find something that's a little bit closer, something that, yeah, I didn't have to spend so much time in the car, really. George had just opened up a gym literally just up the road from me.
Did you know him beforehand?
Did not know him. Nah. So I reached out and I said, this looks sick. He's like, yeah, come check it out.
The same space that he's in now?
Same space he's in now. So I just went and checked it out. And on that day, he's like, well, it's only me and Lewis here. Lewis is the other owner, the S&C coach. And he goes, you want a job? And pretty much I was like, I'll go think about it. But then I was like, 100% I want this. Just to be closer to home, work in a slightly different environment, not have to drive as far, and then kind of go from there. So at that point, I was doing a bit at Woody's gym, say 2 or 3 days, and then I was doing 2 days at Rebuild, and then just slowly got to the point where it was just more Rebuild than I could go down to Woody's gym.
Yeah, and obviously we've been in both facilities that do obviously the acute stage into the mid stage and do the late stage really well, and obviously need a facility to do that. Woodford's obviously had that, and Rebuild definitely have got the gym there as well. It makes the process late stage back into the real world or back to sport a lot simpler.
Yeah, definitely. I think like Rebuild's good in regards to we've got enough gym, we've got enough of our machines, we've got everything we need. We've got our client space there as well, or our treatment rooms, but we also got fields across the road. And I think that's a big standout that I like being there is being able to walk across the road to a soccer field if that's being used. We've got a footy field behind us. Mm-hmm. So we can spend as much time as we need to out on the field to not only get all our measures that we need in the gym, testing-wise or session-wise, but also be able to get out on that field and spend a lot of time with, say, these ACL athletes, getting them back to kind of mechanics that we want to see, high-speed running that we want to see, and starting to get them back into their sport.
Yeah. And for those that are listening, obviously a lot of members that will be listening to this podcast, some potentially may have done an ACL. For a bit of context, myself and Isaiah know Jordy from a mentorship that you offered the both of us. First, Isaiah done it first and spoke incredible value to that program. Then I went and done it. Obviously, I'm not in the rehab space, but from an S&C perspective, it's been fantastic for me to have that understanding, something as little as knowing the scars, and then had a great conversation with the early stage rehabbers about what graft they might have had and what they might be experiencing through that process. I know, Izzy, you really enjoyed your time from a more practical or clinical standpoint.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, moving on to like what you're talking about with the field stuff, like you talk about the value of like integrating the field in ACL rehab for people that don't know too much about the whole process. Why do you think that's so valuable for people to get back out on the field and build their confidence before sort of returning back to sport?
I just think I have such an understanding, or not, maybe a bias, I guess, on like how important biomechanics are. And I feel like, yes, we can get their strength measures back, we can get them moving well in the gym, but that's only, let's say, half of the story or half of the picture. And I want them to be able to see how they move out on the field. And then I want to start to integrate all the areas of that deceleration, that change of direction, even getting, if they're a soccer player, getting them on the ball again, all those type of things, to get them slowly reducing that gap for them to return to sport, but also reduce that re-injury rate. Yeah, I just think that the gym's only part of it. You can be strong, but you can still get injured. But if you're moving well and we're setting you up for a successful rehab, that's where I think the big bang for buck is.
It's something that we've missed out maybe a little bit on. Obviously, we've got the indoor track and stuff, which is great, but it fills up with people very quickly. I know, Isaiah, you've been really good at taking members now down to the local oval, the local track, to make sure we can get a visual on what we're going to see, because we can't go down to team sport training. But yeah, definitely beneficial with yourself. Obviously, we've done some sessions on the oval across the road from Rebuild there. It's absolute game changer to have access to that.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky to have that. And if you don't have that, you just got to find ways, if you can, to set up your schedule to allow for it. If that's you going down to the local park or the local track and having your morning sessions or your night sessions, but just finding a way, because I really think that's important. to be out on the field with your clients, if that's one-on-one or if that's in a small group environment, because it makes a massive difference. Both, I think, physically, but also like confidence-wise, mental side as well, to see them going through their first deceleration or their change of direction, and being able to cue them and coach them the right way, I think is so important for a rehab.
I think even for me, obviously working with you and seeing a lot more ACLs now, like at the start was very much about the numbers and getting back to the return to sport criteria, ticking things off. But then I think the more you see in terms of rehab and the longer you've been doing it, I think the emphasis becomes more of like that coaching eye and what you're actually seeing out in the field. I've sort of found that closes the gap a lot more in terms of my confidence with someone returning to sport, not just strength numbers and stuff like you sort of previously sort of focused on when you were a bit younger as well. For like a traditional physio, obviously they don't get exposed, like you might be in a clinic or even young coaches, they don't get exposed to that side of rehab. What advice would you give to them to upskill themselves in that area or even start to do that a little bit more?
Kind of, you can think of the path that I took of just like I said, I was under Woody and I was just a client to start with. I was lucky that around Christian there was a lot of other good coaches too. So we had a guy named Jay Ellis who pushed me into the field world. And that's when Jay Ellis, Jay Edmonds, Krista Kranis, like we all got into the field world around that same time and we started to learn. So for a younger physio, if they do want to get into the sporting world, I think firstly, it's okay to be in a traditional physio clinic and get used to using your hands quite a lot and seeing a lot of different type of clients. But then if you've done that and you want to get into the sporting world, is just find people that are already doing it, pay for their time, and start to learn from there. Get into some type of mentorship if you want to get into a mentorship, but just find people that are already doing it or are good at it and learn off them. Spend as much time as you can learning, and then slowly progress that into practice. Your first couple of clients may be more guinea pig type stuff where you're trialing new things that you've never done before, but then you start to learn, you start to see patterns, you start to see more clients, and you really start to see what you need to work on to be a better practitioner, or what we normally see in an ACL world as well.
Obviously, that's good from a clinical perspective, but from an S&C coach's perspective, just need to be able to have better conversations,
Yep.
And more of an understanding of your role, right? So like I come and done the mentorship after Isaiah, a little bit over my head at the start, but then I was able to catch up when I understood that my role was mid to late stage as an S&C coach. But yeah, going back to your point about the traditional model, it is obviously missed a lot because a lot of these clinics are probably run by KPIs, 20-minute appointments that are back to back. It makes for a really difficult job to be able to spend time on the field or even get out on the track or spend some time in the weight room with them.
Yeah, and I think that's why ACL could be mismanaged a lot, because in that traditional physio world where, yes, you've only got 20 to 30-minute consults, you don't have time to...
Doesn't allow you, yeah.
Like, if I was in that environment, I don't think I'd be successful. Just because I feel like we need these longer consults. We need to see him move in the gym. We need to see him move out on the field. And we've got to spend time with these clients multiple times a week, kind of like we're in a professional setting. Like that's what we're aiming for in these longer term rehabs, or any rehab in general, I reckon, is can we get them into settings where it's more professional, or we got more touch points so we can make sure that they're staying on track. If there's little things that don't go the right way, okay, we can fix that really fast. If they're mentally struggling with certain aspects, okay, we can see that. If we're seeing them for 20, 30 minutes, and this could get to the point where it's once a month, like you can't be successful unless that person is kind of a genetic freak where they just really respond well to anything. They're really confident, which not everyone is. Like these are the things that we need to build with the multiple consults and the touch points and figuring that out, which just doesn't work in traditional physio.
We talk about that.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
With our model now that we've adopted from you guys, and in terms of the rehab membership and stuff, like I don't think I would be able to do a good job. As you said, if you're seeing someone for 20 minutes, you don't see them for another 6 weeks. Even if they do have great genetics, you can set up the best program in the world. You have to make sure that you don't have to know they're doing their rehab, adhering to the program. It's almost impossible to set up like a successful rehab. Where I get to see patients for 45 minutes to an hour every week, and then I get multiple sort of touch points on the floor, other S&C coaches are seeing. We're checking in if they're not turning up for the week. It just creates like a way better environment for them to succeed. And you just give yourself a better opportunity, I think. So,
and then post by the time they're back at sport, it doesn't stop there. They're just partaking. By the time it's at late stage rehab, they're just conducting a good strength and conditioning program.
And that's one of the biggest things that we have to tell people as well, because in a clinic, you might have those touch points, blah, 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 that probably don't even have any strength testing, and you're sent off back into the real world. You're not integrated into a strength program after. That's the conversation we have all the time with being like, yes, rehab's ticked off, but the work isn't done. Like you need to keep strength training now.
They kind of talk about like the first like 18 months. So even the first like maybe 6 months to a year post you returning, that's still a bit of a scary point or a sketchy point, because a lot of these, high risk, because a lot of these people stop the gym, you know what I mean? Especially soccer players. Up at Rebuild, we work with a lot of soccer players, which traditionally don't love the gym already. So you get them through this whole rehab, and then they tick all their markers that they need to tick. They're strong. They're really strong. They're going back to sport, but then they'll stop. They'll stop the gym. And then if you test them 6 months later, they've lost so much of their strength. There's asymmetries that are coming back.
How do you find that? Because we talk about this all the time. Because I always say, like when we test someone, like say 12 months post, they're probably going to be the strongest they have ever been. They've probably been the most consistent with their program because they're going through a rehab, and they're probably at the absolute peak in terms of numbers. And then I always say to Mitch, like there's going to be, even if they are semi-consistent or pretty consistent and they're staying with us, I can vouch that they'll probably detrain a little bit.
I think detraining a little bit's okay, especially if they're in season, because they're not going to lift as much. They're fatigued more just from trainings and games, which is okay. But it's keeping them in that gym that once a week, if it needs to be, or twice a week, to try and keep a level that we're happy with. Then through that off season, we can start to build up again. But it's having a really good conversation. It's having a really good pathway into the S&C environment, which makes it happen really well. You're still going to have people that drop off because they just don't want to do it. But as much as we can celebrate that they're finishing rehab and pushing them into an S&C environment, and then keeping them going is kind of the most important thing there, but can be challenging with certain people.
It's hard because the rehab journey is so demanding that you have to understand both sides, right? Because it's so taxing. Of course, they're going to want a bit of a breather, but you need to try and keep them in the weight room as best you can. But yeah, we definitely do notice it all the time, and it's conversations that we're constantly having. 90% of them will continue on training with us, and we just obviously isolate graft areas and whatnot, make sure they're jumping and landing well and keeping their strengths up, having 3 to 6 month touch point testing with them just to make sure they're on the straight and narrow. And even still, like we might have, there's been a couple of occasions where they've stayed consistent with us and their numbers will drop off a little bit, and that's probably more or less an intensity thing. But yeah.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, you just got to do the best you can to keep them going, and just educate early. I think if you educate early, like everyone understands.
They buy in,
they buy in. I reckon, again, easier for people that are in more of a football environment as well, like AFL or rugby or something there, just because they're used to lifting weights. It's trying to educate earlier these soccer players, I reckon, that it's not just an off-season thing, it's a during the season thing that we've got to stay on top of.
Yeah.
How young are you seeing them now?
Young?
Yeah.
You get some like, let's say 12, 13, 14. That's probably the youngest we're seeing.
Had a couple of 11s.
Yeah. For us, it's normally the more
I think probably 12, 13 when they first started, and they've grown up a little bit now.
Yeah.
But yeah, young kids coming through.
Yeah.
Which is, they don't even, like we talk about it all the time, they don't comprehend what a knee is, let alone an ACL. They don't know what's going on.
Let alone training intensity or movement quality.
Yeah.
So you've got to train all these things. If you get someone who's, maybe a senior footballer, might be 18, 19-year-old, they've probably got some understanding of the way their body's going to move.
Yeah.
So moving into that rehab space can often be, relatively smooth. But if you've got someone who's 12, 13, 14, 15, who's never stepped into a gym before, has never been taught how to hinge or squat or anything before, and then trying to manage the rehab process while trying to get them up to speed with movement quality can be very challenging.
Yeah, super challenging, but it's also a good introduction into the S&C world for some of these people too.
For sure, we have to speak about.
If you get them on the right track,
could be the best thing that ever happened to them in
100%.
terms of their. Yeah. We talk about that all the time because a lot of the time, as you said, it's the intro to the S&C world for them. They haven't stepped in the gym before. and then people come out the other end better athletes. So it can be a blessing if they sort of buy into that whole process.
If they hear and they stay on top of it, definitely, man. If they go the other way, it can be quite challenging.
Yeah.
But they're also young too, and young kids, like they progress pretty well.
Yeah.
They can get their strength numbers back because they don't really have much strength already. So there's pros and cons, I guess, for it.
So staying on the topic of the ACL rehab stuff, the ACL world is sort of transitioning a lot and progressing a lot in terms of research and stuff like that. What has sort of changed for you with your practice, or how you're viewing things in sort of like recent times, last year or so?
I think the more ACLs you see some really good results, but then you also see the ones that are quite challenging and don't go the way that you want it to go, and you're trying to find out why. And I think the biggest thing that I've learnt from all that, let's say over the last couple of years, is how important the first stage is, that phase one, that acute stage is, and setting that up really nicely. So I think the biggest thing that I do now over the last couple of years is really prepare my athlete as much as possible in regards to getting their gait pattern really nice, getting the range of motion, the extension and the flexion in a really good position that I'm happy with early days before I'm pushing into any more. It could be the quad activation, really getting that going so we don't have any AMI that really comes to the back end of the rehab when I start to do a little bit more quad-based stuff. And even the swelling, getting that in a really good position before I'm thinking about stepping into that phase two. This kind of makes my running be pushed back a little bit, and I think that's a good thing. So normally, or traditionally, I'd want running to be around 12 weeks because that's what I was told. But the more I work with these clients, I want to set them up that foundation a little bit better, and then I push running back to, say, 4 months. So I think the foundational aspect for me has the main thing that I've changed. Everything else is kind of progressing down the track nicely from there.
Yeah.
And something you said to me, I'm sure you said to Isaiah as well, is if you miss that initial stage of the rehab, obviously getting slowing down, getting extension back, getting core activation back, if you're not honing in on the importance of those aspects early on in the rehab, it does bite you in the bum later on. You've definitely noticed that.
Yeah, 100%. And it also depends what graft too. So like it'll bite you in the bum in different ways. Like if we're not setting the hamstrings up, for example, with a hamstring graft, then it'll be really hard to build that hamstring inner range strength later down the track. So that's something that I really want to focus on early for that. If it's a quad graft, for example, and I don't have the quads going, there's a bit of AMI going on, so we just can't get that quad activation. When I start to get them out on the field and we go through some deceleration work, that's when that athlete might start to break down. So yeah, if we set that foundation up nicely for that person and the graft selection that they've chosen, I think everything else does run pretty smooth. There's always small things that do happen throughout a rehab, some type of overload normally, but most of it will run quite smooth.
Yeah, awesome.
I've sort of noticed the same thing, and I think the hardest part about it with nailing all those pillars early is if you're not getting extension, then you're walking on a bent knee, then you're going to get swelling, and if you've got a swollen knee, you're going to get quad inhibition, and it's sort of just like a merry-go-round, and they're all influencing each other. If that doesn't go to plan, you've got someone a little bit later coming through the doors, because this is what I've struggled with in the past. If you have someone later down the line and they might come in with a lot of quad inhibition in the late stage, how are you tackling things like that?
If it's just they're coming in with a lot of quad inhibition, if they've got everything else, let's say they got the extension, they don't have the swelling, but they've just got quad inhibition because of that AMI or just that arthrogenic muscle inhibition that happens with rehab, then number one, I'm having a really good conversation that this is probably what's going on. This is quite challenging, so this is gonna take some time. And then I'm trying to find exercises or interventions that are gonna help me firstly get some type of quad burn and then build from there. So for example, if someone comes in and they can't even do a leg extension on the lightest weight, what do we do there? So that's when interventions may come in where we're using blood flow restriction. We're using Compex, so muscle stim, and we're just trying to find ways to get a little bit of a burn. We're using a leg extension machine that has no weight compared to 9 kilos. We're working on exercises like pulses, holds, anything that's going to try and get that burn, and that's the first thing that I'm looking for there. Very challenging though. something that is going to take time, but you just got to find those small wins and something they probably haven't felt before, and then be able to slowly build on it from there.
It's funny because like all of a sudden, if you get it right, everything just turns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the progress can be very linear.
Yeah.
It can be smooth sailing for quite a period of time. Then you run into another brick wall.
Yeah. Because normally they have everything else. Like, let's say I see someone late and they got quad inhibition, but they normally have some decent amount of glute strength, quad strength, hamstring strength, calf strength, but there's just something that's blocking that quad from firing. That neural pathways just haven't fully been fired. It's more of a back road compared to the highway. So we're just like, if we get that on track, which could be one simple thing that they just haven't gone through, then yes, it's going to start to come. It still means they're behind in certain aspects, so areas are going to be quite challenging for them. But yeah, we're starting to get going there.
Yeah, awesome. I think we spoke on before, Izzy asked the question about, do you have any advice for sort of young coaches and practitioners coming into the industry? What about more experienced practitioners that have been in the field for a long period of time, perhaps maybe stuck in a certain way or traditional model, which is no fault of their own? What do you want for the industry, and how do you think that those experienced practitioners can move the industry forward?
I think if we continue to talk about ACLs or long-term rehabs, I think we've got to set athletes up for success. And that means we've got to have a clinic that's set up for that athlete to have success, which means we've got to find ways to have longer appointments. We've got to find ways to have multiple touch points. If you're a practitioner that's been in the game for a while, but you've just been working in a private practice where you get those 20, 30 minutes, can you find different clinics or S&C environments where you can start to implement that?
Even like referral pathways to good gyms even?
Yep. So finding ways to create a successful environment for our athletes is the most important thing. And again, it's going back to trying to get to a more of a professional model where we can see those clients a little bit more, have more touch points, be in an environment where we've got a bigger gym or a field close by, but just have stuff that's going to set them up. I
think it is happening. I know we are in that space, so we probably see it a little bit more. But I think you saw it with the shift in PT to semi-private S&C being influenced by sort of high-performance sport and stuff. And then now I think the rehab side of things is sort of leaking sort of into that a little bit as well, with the model sort of changing.
Yes, I think Melbourne does it really well.
Yeah.
Like Melbourne, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
You can see in every other state that there's a bit going on.
Yeah.
But Melbourne, there's like, it's really good to be around because you're always talking to people that are in similar environments. And we go to courses. Sports Map's a really good course that I like to go to every year where they have something that, if it's Ed De King or Tim McGrath, people that I really like, but it's stuff that we can implement straight away, where if you're just in a private setting where you're in 20, 30-minute consults, you can't implement any of this stuff. So, yeah, Melbourne's got a lot, I believe.
Awesome. Touching back before, I know at the start of the podcast, we briefly touched on the mentorship. Obviously, myself and Isaiah went through that mentorship with you. How long was it? 12 weeks?
12 weeks.
Yeah. 12 weeks. Up there in Northcote at Rebuild Health and Performance with yourself and George. It was fantastic for me, obviously, being in the strength and conditioning space. Izzy, from more of a clinical point of view, do you want to give us a bit more of a rundown how that program works for anyone who might be looking to upskill, and take us through how that sort of looks?
Yeah, the mentorship at the moment, it's a 12-week ACL mentorship, and it kind of runs from the very start of a rehab, progressing all the way to the end of the rehab. And that's going to include each phase of an ACL rehab. It's going to include the testing that comes with it, kind of the patterns that we do see, but also, well, the good patterns, but also the ones that are quite challenging too. So it's just trying to get a really full view of an ACL rehab from the very start to the very end. We kind of tailor it depending on the person or the group of people that are coming in. If it's more of an allied health compared to an S&C, we modify it a little bit there. But it's a really good understanding of what really goes on in ACL rehab. We kind of have touch points every second week too, where we talk about that person's caseload or that clinic's caseload, and we try and really get them to understand what they're actually working on right now. How can we help a little bit with that? We kind of keep it to ACLs, but a lot of those conversations do dive into hamstrings or quads or calves or athletic groin pain as well. But I think it's a way too that you can already get started with some aspect of it and continue to learn that whole way through the ACL rehab.
I think definitely as a strength coach, as mentioned before, it's really good to have that understanding. Izzy, how was it for you from a clinical point of view?
Yeah, it was really good. Like, obviously, my point of view, I see a lot of the middle to late stage, and to dive into deeper with the early stage, just like a S&C would. Like, I still see myself as very much an S&C coach doing more of the clinical stuff. So learning a lot about the early stage and identifying graphs and how to manage them differently, because it just makes your conversation better when you're working with physios and that handover process as well. I think it makes the whole process a lot smoother. Like you said, setting up the early stage really well sets people up for the long term. So my understanding of that got a lot better. And then just the whole integration with the big focus on the field aspect side of things was really cool as well. So yeah, it was massive.
And same as me, like we had a conversation a few times. It's just regressed S&C.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. And I think I was banging my head against a brick wall a little bit about it with you at the start, but just understanding obviously my own role, but just regress the S&C as far as you can.
Yeah, you're spot on there. It's definitely regress S&C, and it's just understanding, I reckon. That's perfect. Understanding how to regress, progress, or lateralize depending on what that athlete in front of you is doing. If they've got a quad graft or a hamstring graft, or there's a lot of shifting that happens, like we can just play around with small things. But at the end of the day, it's a program that's tailored towards them and their long-term kind of athlete development.
I think if you're an S&C coach in any field, whether you work with obviously athletes or general population, upskilling yourself in that understanding of the role that injury rehab plays, and your role as a strength coach is extremely beneficial. Obviously, from a clinical point of view, beneficial as well. So, no, I was very grateful for that, what that's done for me, and definitely our business from a systems point of view as well. I did want to close out and get a bit more of an understanding. Obviously, you've got some very exciting news. You are leaving us. You are heading up back home to Gold Coast. So I wouldn't say leaving us. You are going back home, which is obviously very exciting. As I mentioned, you've become a great friend of ours. We speak quite often. You've got a partner who hopefully going to head up and maybe start a family soon, but do you want to give us a rundown as to sort of what's on the horizon for you? Give us a spiel as what's next for Baseline Performance.
Yeah, so starting Baseline Sports Performance. My friend Yasu Maki, who's extremely good physio, we went to uni together on the Gold Coast. Probably over the last 3-4 years, we just continue to talk about that. We want to open something up back on the Gold Coast. But it's always been me that just hasn't made the move to get back to the Gold Coast. My partner Savannah and I have finally decided that we're heading back next year, and we've already decided to open up a clinic, Baseline Sports Performance.
So is Savannah from the Gold Coast too?
Yep.
Oh, she is.
Yeah,
so you didn't have to convince her.
No. Well, I had to because she loves Melbourne.
Yeah.
But I've convinced her enough to move back. So we're gonna move back to the coast, where we grew up. Baseline Sports Performance has already opened. It's been going for the last 3-4 months, which Yasu's just running the whole shop and doing a great job at the moment. But it's literally everything we just spoke about today. It's a facility that's going to be, you got your clinical setting as well, but you've got your gym there, and we're going to get the field sessions going as well. Exactly the same what I'm doing at Rebuild and what you guys are doing as well, but we're just bringing that to the Gold Coast, which I don't reckon has it.
I was about to mention that. It's got nothing there.
Yeah, it's got stuff there, but nothing's done really well, I don't reckon.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a really good facility for the Gold Coast, and we can continue to build. We both grew up there, so we got really nice connections as well. So I think it's going to be a really enjoyable but challenging part of my life that I'm ready to hit.
Oh, so, I think it's exciting.
I'll be back middle of next year. But Yasu's running the whole shop from when it opened up in probably 2 months ago.
What's the ultimate vision?
I don't know what the ultimate vision is yet. I've got to decide we've got to decide if we want to just keep it small and niche and really enjoy what we do, or do we want to build something out a little bit more? But if I had to look at the vision, it's just a really successful, and I mean successful that I can return people to sport really well, kind of rehab facility.
I think with any sort of business, you end up, obviously, I know it, Michael knows it here with the studio we're in, but you have a vision and you end up pivoting 10 or 15 times before you figure it out, and it could be something completely different. I think the journey of the unknown is really exciting. I know Carl Goodman from AA gave me a good quote when I was up there at Athletes Authority. You're only walking through the jungle with a machete, and we can only see this far in front of our face. So I think that's the joy, and we find that joy in the chaos of not knowing. But yeah, wanted to wish you all the best, man. I'll be up there on Wednesday the 5th with you. So I'll get in there and have a look around, throw some weights around, which would be good.
Cannot wait.
But yeah, congratulations, man. It's really exciting. You're a very well-respected member of the industry. Melbourne will be ashamed to lose you. I'm sure George is shattered as well. But you've been, like I said, a really good friend of ours. We look up to you immensely. A lot better than me and Izzy at golf, that's for sure. But yeah, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate everything you do for us.
No worries, guys. Thanks
Thanks,
having me.
Jordy.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for tuning in to the Coach's Corner podcast, brought to you by Iron Edge. Please share around and don't forget to hit the follow and subscribe button. We'll see you next time.